The polished chrome and smoked glass of the Aethelred building pierced the sky, a monument to a future most people were still trying to imagine. Inside, on the 34th floor, in a beige cubicle tucked away at the back of the open-plan office, sat Elara Vance. She was, by all accounts, an entirely unremarkable data entry clerk. Her clothes were neat, her desk was tidy, and her presence was so consistently quiet that she had achieved a state of corporate invisibility. She sat at the back, and that's where everyone, including Elara herself, seemed to think she belonged. Her colleagues, a boisterous and ambitious tribe of junior executives and marketing hopefuls, barely registered her existence. They were the ones who spoke in acronyms and lived on a diet of caffeine and corporate jargon. Their laughter was loud, their aspirations even louder. Elara, in contrast, was a whisper in a room full of shouting. She would listen during the mandatory morning huddles, her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, occasionally flickering with something that could have been mistaken for disinterest, but was, in reality, a profound and unnerving understanding. The company, Aethelred, was at the pinnacle of the tech world, its enigmatic founder, Julian Croft, having vanished years ago, leaving behind a legacy of innovation and a mountain of unanswered questions. The current CEO, Marcus Thorne, was a man carved from a different, less visionary block. He was all sharp suits and sharper ambition, a man who saw Aethelred not as a dream to be nurtured, but as a beast to be tamed and milked for every drop of profit. The inciting incident arrived on a Tuesday, disguised as a company-wide email from Thorne himself. It spoke of a paradigm-shifting challenge, a next-generation encryption protocol that was proving to be unbreachable. This wasn't a boast, it was a cry for help. A rival firm, a new upstart with a swagger that reminded everyone of a younger Aethelred, had developed it. And Aethelred, the giant of the industry, couldn't crack it. Their top engineers, the so-called minds of the 35th floor, were stumped. The multi-billion-dollar Odyssey project, Aethelred's next big thing, was dead in the water without a solution. A palpable tension descended upon the office. The usual cacophony of a thriving workplace was replaced by a low, anxious hum. Meetings were held behind closed doors, voices were raised, and the free kombucha in the break room went untouched. Marcus Thorne, usually a man of manufactured calm, was seen pacing his glass-walled office, his face a thundercloud of frustration. Anjali Sharma, the head of human resources, watched the unfolding drama with a growing sense of unease. She was a woman who believed in the human element of the corporate machine, a belief that was often at odds with Thorne's ruthless pragmatism. He had tasked her with a near-impossible mission to find the hidden geniuses, the dormant assets within the company who might hold the key. It was a corporate platitude, a desperate throw of the dice, and she knew it. But it was also her job. Her search began with a deep dive into employee files, a tedious process of sifting through performance reviews and educational backgrounds. It was during this trawl that she first truly noticed Elara Vance. On paper, Elara was average. A degree in library sciences, a string of unassuming administrative jobs. Nothing to suggest a hidden genius. But then Anjali saw the notes from her initial interview, written by Anjali's predecessor. Unusual aptitude for pattern recognition. One-line read, seems to see connections others miss. It was faint, but it was something. Anjali started observing Elara more closely. She saw how Elara would tilt her head in meetings, as if listening to a frequency no one else could hear. She noticed how Elara's fingers would sometimes trace invisible patterns on her desk, her eyes unfocused, lost in a world of her own. Most people would have dismissed it as daydreaming. Anjali, however, had a feeling it was something more. The pressure from Thorn intensified. The deadline for the Odyssey project loomed, and the company's stock was beginning to show the strain. The minds of the 35th floor had all but admitted defeat. The atmosphere in the office was thick with the stench of failure. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, something strange happened. The main conference room's smart screen, a state of the art piece of Aethelred technology, flickered and died during a high-stakes presentation. A collective groan went through the room. As the tech support team scrambled, the screen flickered back to life, but instead of the corporate logo, a single line of elegant, almost poetic, code appeared. It was a language none of the engineers recognized, yet it held a strange, intuitive beauty. From her desk at the back of the room, Elara Vance looked up, a flicker of something unreadable in her stormy eyes. She had seen that code before. It was a language she understood perfectly, and it was a language that should have been long forgotten. The cryptic line of code on the conference room screen became the new obsession at Aethelred. The minds of the 35th floor analyzed it, dissected it, and ultimately dismissed it as a glitch, a random string of characters coughed up by a malfunctioning system. But the image of the elegant script had been seared into Anjali Sharma's mind. It felt less like a malfunction and more like a message. Her focus sharpened on Elara Vance. Anjali began to orchestrate accidental encounters, striking up conversations by the coffee machine, in the elevator, anywhere she could observe the quiet data entry clerk outside of her natural habitat. Elara was polite, reserved, and offered nothing that would overtly betray any hidden depths. Yet, Anjali noticed the small things. When discussing the unbreakable encryption problem with a group of colleagues, Elara had quietly murmured, "It's not a wall, it's a mirror." The comment was so soft it was almost lost in the surrounding chatter, but Anjali heard it, and it chilled her. A wall is a barrier. A mirror reflects the attacker's own methods back at them, a far more complex and elegant defense. Meanwhile, the corporate drama intensified. Marcus Thorn, now facing the very real possibility of a catastrophic failure, was becoming a tyrant. His emails grew more demanding, his deadlines more unrealistic. He pitted departments against each other, fostering a culture of fear and suspicion. The social thriller aspect of Aethelred's environment was in full swing. Friendships frayed, and a palpable sense of paranoia hung in the air. Anjali, in her mandated search for hidden talent, started to dig deeper into Elara's past. The official records were sparse, almost unnervingly so. It was as if Elara Vance had materialized into existence 5 years ago. Anjali used her own, more discreet resources to search for any trace of her before that. She found nothing. It was a digital ghost. The light supernatural element began to manifest in more overt ways, always with Elara at the periphery. One evening, as Anjali worked late, her computer froze. As she was about to call for tech support, her screensaver, a generic corporate logo, dissolved into a mesmerizing pattern of swirling fractals. Within the patterns, for a fleeting second, Anjali thought she saw a face, a kind, older man with eyes the same stormy gray as Elara's. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. Her computer was working perfectly again. The next day, Anjali noticed a small, hand-drawn fractal on a sticky note on Elara's desk. It was identical to the one she had seen on her screen. Anjali knew she was straying into territory that had no place in a corporate HR manual. But her intuition, a trait she had always trusted, screamed that Elara was the key. She decided to take a risk. She accidentally left a printout of the rival firm's encrypted code on the printer near Elara's desk. It was a complex, daunting wall of text and symbols that had confounded the best minds at Aethelred. Later that day, Anjali walked past Elara's cubicle. The printout was gone. Elara was staring at her screen, but her hands were still, her expression serene. The air around her desk seemed to hum with an almost imperceptible energy. It was then that Anjali knew she had to act, regardless of the consequences. Thorn was desperate, and Anjali was about to give him the most unlikely of saviors. She was no longer just an HR manager. She was the unwilling custodian of a secret that could either save Aethelred or tear it apart. The air in the boardroom on the 35th floor was thick with the metallic tang of fear. The minds of Aethelred, a collection of the brightest and most arrogant engineers in the industry, sat around the long, polished table, their faces grim. Marcus Thorn stood at the head, a predator circling his prey. He was on the verge of a corporate massacre, ready to fire the entire Odyssey project team. The company's stock was in a nosedive, and the vultures of the media were circling. "This is a failure of imagination," Thorn said, his voice dangerously low. "A failure of the very ethos this company was built on." It was at that moment that the boardroom doors opened. All heads turned. Anjali Sharma stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of resolve and trepidation. And beside her, looking small and out of place in her simple gray cardigan, was Elara Vance. A ripple of confusion and annoyance went through the room. "Anjali, I hope this is important," Thorn said, his patience worn to a thread. "It is, Marcus," Anjali replied, her voice steady. "This is Elara Vance. I believe she has something to contribute." A few of the engineers snorted in disbelief. A data entry clerk, one of them muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Thorn, however, was desperate enough to clutch at any straw. He gestured towards an empty chair. "Fine," he snapped. "Let's hear it. What's your grand insight, Miss Vance?" Elara walked to the table, her movements calm and deliberate. She didn't take a seat. Instead, she stood before the massive smart screen at the front of the room. She picked up a stylus and, with a flick of her wrist, the screen came to life. The rival firm's impenetrable code filled the screen. "You've been trying to break down a wall," Elara said, her voice quiet but clear, resonating with an unexpected authority. The room fell silent. "But it's not a wall. It's a mirror." She began to write on the screen, her hand moving with a fluid, mesmerizing grace. She wasn't writing code in any known language. She was drawing patterns, connecting symbols, creating a visual tapestry that seemed to flow from her very being. The engineers watched, their skepticism slowly turning to awe. She was mapping the encryption, not as a linear problem, but as a multi-dimensional, self-reflecting entity. "The encryption doesn't just block you," she explained, her voice gaining strength. "It learns from you. Every attempt to break it makes it stronger. It uses your own methods, your own logic, and reflects it back at you, enhanced." A gasp went through the room. It was a concept so elegant, so revolutionary, that no one had even considered it. "So it's impossible?" one of the lead engineers asked, his voice laced with a newfound respect. No, Elara said, a faint smile touching her lips. You just have to stop trying to break in. You have to show it a reflection it can't comprehend. And then she did something that defied all logic. She erased the complex diagrams and wrote a single line of code, the same elegant, poetic script that had appeared on the conference room screen days before. This, she said, is a paradox. A question with no answer. The system will try to solve it, to reflect it, but it can't. It will be caught in an infinite loop. She turned to face the room. It will open the door for you. Not by force, but by invitation. The room was stunned into a profound silence. Marcus Thorne stared at the screen, then at Elara, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning realization. The minds of Aethelred looked at the quiet woman from the back of the office as if seeing her for the first time. She hadn't just offered a solution. She had revealed a new way of thinking. Who are you? Thorne whispered, the question hanging in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Elara's stormy eyes met his. My name is Elara Vance, she said simply. And Julian Croft was my father. The revelation landed like a thunderclap, shaking the very foundations of Aethelred. The woman who sat at the back was not just a forgotten employee. She was the heir to the company's soul, the daughter of the visionary who had started it all, and she had just proven that his genius flowed through her veins. The game had changed, and everyone in that room knew it. The boardroom, once a theater of impending doom, was now a vacuum of stunned silence. The name Julian Croft, a near mythical figure within the walls of Aethelred, had not been uttered with such significance in years. And to have it claimed by the unassuming data entry clerk who had just single-handedly salvaged the company's future was a shockwave that reset every power dynamic in the room. Marcus Thorne was the first to recover, his sharp, opportunistic mind already calculating the new landscape. He saw not a threat, but the ultimate asset. A living, breathing link to the company's hallowed past, a story that could be spun into a legend, revitalizing the Aethelred brand and, more importantly, its stock price. His demeanor shifted from tyrannical to fawning in a split second. Elara, he said, the name now laced with a reverence that was both comical and unsettling. We are indebted to you. We need to talk. About your future. About Aethelred's future. The minds of the 35th floor were a study in conflicting emotions. Some looked at Elara with a newfound, almost fearful, respect. Others, their egos bruised and their expertise rendered obsolete in a matter of minutes, stared at her with a venomous jealousy. The social fabric of the corporate elite had been torn, and Elara was the one holding the thread. Anjali, standing by the door, felt a surge of protectiveness. She had thrown Elara into the lion's den, and now she had to make sure the lions didn't devour her. She stepped forward, positioning herself as a gentle but firm barrier. I think Elara has had enough for one day, Marcus. We can schedule a follow-up meeting. Thorne, eager to play the part of the considerate leader, readily agreed. The meeting was adjourned, the engineers filing out of the room in a daze, whispering amongst themselves. The mystery of the quiet woman from the back had been solved, only to be replaced by 100 new questions. In the days that followed, the story of Elara Vance, the secret daughter, spread through the company like wildfire. She became an overnight celebrity, a corporate enigma. Her cubicle at the back of the 34th floor was now a shrine, with colleagues walking past, hoping for a glimpse of the woman who had saved them all. But Elara was no longer there. Thorn had moved her to a spacious office on the 35th floor, near his own, a gilded cage with a breathtaking view of the city. Anjali became Elara's de facto confidante. In the quiet of her new office, Elara began to share her story. She had hidden her identity, she explained, to escape the suffocating weight of her father's legacy. He had been a brilliant but troubled man, his mind a whirlwind of ideas that often bordered on the chaotic. Her unique cognitive abilities, a form of synesthesia that allowed her to perceive data as patterns and colors, were something he had understood and nurtured. After his disappearance, she had sought anonymity, a quiet corner of the world where she could simply be herself. Not the daughter of a legend, the light supernatural element of her abilities was, as she explained it, a profound neurodivergence. She didn't see the future, but she could see the intricate, invisible connections between things, the echoes of past events in the present, the shape of a problem. The cryptic code she had written was a language her father had created, a way to communicate complex, paradoxical ideas. But her emergence from the shadows had come at a cost. She was now a commodity, a symbol. Thorn wanted to parade her in front of the board, the media. He saw her as the new face of Aethelred, a story of hidden genius that would captivate the world. The corporate drama had shifted from a crisis of technology to a battle for Elara's soul. She had solved one puzzle, only to find herself at the center of a much larger, more dangerous one. And she knew that her next move would not be about saving a company, but about saving herself. The offer, when it came, was as extravagant as Marcus Thorn himself. He presented it to Elara in her new, sterile office, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of fallen stars. He wanted to create a new position for her, Chief Innovation Officer. She would have unlimited resources, a dedicated team, and a direct line to the board. She would be, in essence, the new visionary of Aethelred, the public face of the company's triumphant rebirth. It was everything anyone in the corporate world could ever dream of. But as Elara listened to Thorn's effusive pitch, she didn't see an opportunity. She saw a cage, gilded and spacious, but a cage nonetheless. She saw a future of press conferences and board meetings, of her ideas being filtered through marketing teams and focus groups. She saw her unique way of seeing the world being packaged, commodified, and sold. The social thriller had reached its peak. Her own identity was the prize. Anjali had warned her. "He doesn't see you, Elara," she had said over coffee in one of their now frequent conversations. "He sees a story, a very, very profitable story." The day of the big announcement arrived. Thorn had called a company-wide meeting in the grand atrium, a massive, sun-drenched space designed to inspire awe. The media had been invited. The stage was set for the coronation of Aethelred's new princess. Thorn gave a rousing speech, full of corporate buzzwords and self-congratulation. He spoke of resilience, of innovation, of the incredible talent hidden within the company. And then, with a flourish, he called Elara to the stage. "And now," he boomed, "I am thrilled to introduce the woman who represents the very soul of Aethelred. The woman who will lead us into the future. Our new Chief Innovation Officer, Elara Vance." A polite, expectant applause filled the atrium. Elara walked to the podium, the stormy gray of her eyes calm and resolute. She looked out at the sea of faces, her former colleagues from the back of the 34th floor. The stunned engineers, from the 35th, the calculating gaze of Marcus Thorne. She took a deep breath. "Thank you, Marcus," she began, her quiet voice carrying a surprising weight in the vast space. "I am grateful for the offer, but I cannot accept." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Thorne's smile froze on his face. "My father," Elara continued, "didn't build this company to be a monument to one person. He built it to be a garden of ideas. He believed that genius wasn't a title you are given, but something that grows in the most unexpected places. It grows in the quiet corners, in the back of the room." She looked directly at Thorne. "You were right, Marcus. You had a failure of imagination. But it wasn't just about the encryption. It was about not seeing the people around you, not listening to the quiet voices. Aethelred doesn't need a new face. It needs a new way of listening." She then announced her counter-proposal. She didn't want a C-suite title. Instead, she wanted to lead a new, independent division within Aethelred, a skunkworks project with a deliberately low profile. Its name, the back of the room. Its mandate, to seek out and nurture the unconventional, the overlooked, the quietly brilliant ideas from every level of the company. It would be a space free from corporate hierarchy, a place where the only currency was imagination. It was a masterful move. She had rejected Thorne's power play in a way he couldn't refuse without looking like a fool. She had honored her father's true legacy, not as a singular genius, but as a cultivator of genius in others. She had chosen not to sit on the throne, but to build a bigger, more inclusive table. The aftermath was a quiet revolution. Thorne, his hand forced, had to agree. The back of the room division was established, with Angeli as its co-head, ensuring its human element was always at the forefront. Elara, once again, faded from the corporate limelight, but her influence was more profound than ever. She had traded the corner office for a collaborative workspace, the title of CIO for the role of a mentor. She still sat at the back sometimes, in meetings for her own division, listening, observing, seeing the patterns no one else could. But now, when Elara Vance sat at the back, it wasn't because she was forgotten. It was because she was watching, waiting for the next quiet voice to emerge from the noise. And everyone knew that from the back of the room, she could see everything.